Emily Block, and I want to welcome you to the 5th installment of Understanding Woburn's Community Preservation. And I have with me here at Cranberry Bog, John Sachs, and he has agreed to come and help us explore what could be done with some of Woburn's open spaces. Some are somewhat neglected, others are more developed, but there's potential in all of them, I think. So welcome, John. Thank you for coming. So what do you think are your first impressions of Cranberry Bog?
This is a beautiful spot. I've always loved places like this. I was raised a bit in the country, and I think a lot of people have sort of lost touch with what you can get from being out of doors. One of the things that I've found, I do a lot of work with the Mary Cummings Park piece of land in Burlington, which is its own little controversy, but
which has a small section in Woburn, doesn't it?
Small section in Woburn, that's
yeah.
right. And Woburn did a marvelous thing by buying the Whispering Hills section, preserving it, because it would have been houses if they had not done that. But one of the things that we found is that there are these pieces of land in and around the suburbs, and for whatever reason, people have become somewhat hesitant to just take a walk in the woods. And so at Mary Cummings Park, one of the things that we've been doing is clearing trails and putting up signs. People seem to be a lot more comfortable if they see signs. Now, we all know that these are very small places, really, in the grand scheme of things, but people are afraid of getting lost. So if you have a trail that's cleared, and if you put up signs, and ideally if you supply trail maps and other guides, it's much more welcoming to people. We've been doing this on a shoestring up there, but to put up good trail signs, to maintain trails, it does cost some money. Not a lot of money, but it does take some money on an ongoing basis. Somebody built this beautiful bridge. Over time, this will need to be kept up and replaced, and CPA could definitely pay for that kind of work.
Yeah.
I think as we look out here, there's a beautiful wetland. Now, one of the things about wetlands is that you can't get out there unless you probably couldn't even do this on a little raft. So perhaps a boardwalk could be put out there with an observation station. I'm sure bird people could tell us what kind of species can be seen from out there. But I know that all around here, where you have a boardwalk and where you have a nice big timber observation station, people love to go to those places. And there's no reason why it couldn't be done here, but that's the kind of thing that CPA could pay for.
Yeah, because it's not that messy. I mean, I expected to find a lot of trash or something, but it's not.
It's remarkably
It's just kind of neglected.
Yes.
And right before we started filming, I was watching down here, and I don't know what it was, but some big white movement, and I would like to investigate. And I suppose if we had CPA guides, one of the guides or some of the guides could be about nature, some of the birds, the wildlife.
I think along with trail signs telling you what's where and how to get back to your car, because people do get a little panicked, a little turned around, would be some signs explaining what was here. The Historical Society could get involved to explain what is this bridge, what used to be here, maybe with a picture of what used to be here, to make it more like a little, some of the kinds of things that they can afford to do with some of the national parks, national monuments, on a smaller scale could be done here, and then people would start to come here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
It's really quite
very beautiful.
And I'll tell you, here we are in late summer, everything's still green. I bet in the winter, the snowfalls on this, it's going to be beautiful. And in another couple of weeks, the fall colors will be magnificent right here. So in every season, a place like this is, I mean, here we haven't had rain, a lot of rain, and the Aberjone is flowing very beautifully right through here. Babbling Brook, everybody loves that. So I think making it more accessible. Yeah. There's areas where there's a fair amount of invasive species have come in. And one of the nastiest ones, actually, it's this guy right here. My least favorite
Let's have a
plant.
close-up.
nasty, nasty plant which has beautiful flowers. It's a multiflora rose, and when you walk down the trails, it catches you. It's really a horrible plant. Well, this could be, you'll never get rid of it completely, but you could have a lot of it removed by volunteers and some paid help and so forth. Getting rid of the invasives would bring this much closer to the wild land that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that, in my opinion, is suspect number one. I hate that plant.
I'd say sumac might be suspect number 2.
Well, remember, now this here, actually, this here is sumac, but it's just not poison sumac. It's just sumac. It's staghorn or one of those sumacs, and they're pretty much harmless. There is, I've been looking around to see if there is any poison sumac here, and it turns out to be extremely rare. I met a botanist, and I said, have you ever found poison sumac in the woods out here? He said he was looking for it for 18 years and never found it. So we found it eventually through another botanist. So sumac is everywhere, but it's almost always the benign kind. But that's the kind of thing that signage could tell you.
Yeah.
You could have a sign right here that says this is a stand of sumac and this is what it's good for. You can make tea from the berries. And if there was any...
But that it's not native.
No, it is.
Oh, it is
It's
native.
totally
to here.
native.
Oh.
And so is poison ivy, poison ivy is often referred to as invasive. It's invasive in the sense that it'll grow everywhere, but it was here long before any Europeans were here, and possibly even before people came across the land bridge. So poison ivy, the problem with poison ivy is that in a normal forest it's shaded out, and it would only grow along riverbanks back in the old days, but now we've subdivided everything into little sections of the road, so it grows on every roadside and every trail, and so that's why poison ivy is now a problem. I actually have seen remarkably little poison ivy out here, given the fact that it's a pretty wild area.
Yeah. And to go back to the history, I don't know very much about it, but from what I've learned just 5 minutes on the internet, is this used to be mill pond, this area. And it was drained in 1905 to flood it for cranberry bogs.
Right.
And Woburn was a producer of cranberries until the 1950s. And they stopped because the Aberjona was too polluted.
Yes.
So we've got a couple different eras of history. We've got the pre-people.
Right.
We've got some people, and then we've got the pollution areas. And now is the time we can try to fix that.
Another perfect subject for a historical informative sign would be, and maybe there's historical pictures of, even from a similar area, this area, of what it looked like when it was a cranberry bog. Very educational. Woburn has an incredibly active historical society that I'm sure knows all kinds of things about this area, and with some CPA money, that information could be brought out here in public. There could be flyers and signage and just all kinds of things to make people more aware of what's here and just enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that this piece of land, 30 acres you say, probably not well known, probably a little underutilized, but with a small amount of focused CPA money, this area could be a real point of pride for Woburn, an area that a lot of people would visit. Classes can come here, school kids could learn from here, and people could just come in for a walk on a weekend or whatever time. And all that's needed, as I said, a little investment for some signage, clear the trails, and something that's already here could just be elevated. Yeah. I would like to come back and be able to cross over up here and see a few more things, but yeah, I think it's quite a lovely place. Good. Okay.
Hi, welcome back. We have changed location. We are now right beside the Middlesex Canal, which was, of course, a working canal and a very important part of Woburn in days gone by. And we are here now because there's not much more to it than what you see right now. You want to say something? Well, I think this is one of those amazing places that when I first discovered this, I said, what is this? You know, here's this canal. The amount of history is unbelievable. They dug this thing,
and this is how goods moved.
With an old tire now.
There's a lot of junk in it now, and I understand over the years people have tried to clean it up, but I mean, if you think about the history here, in this path that can be a wonderful walking path that connects different communities.
And what was it originally?
This was the mule path
Ah.
that they pulled the boats on. Now, can you imagine if with some CPA money, could do a little cleanup here, and annually there could be a boat pulled this section, just through this little section here that's still clear, by a mule, and people on the boat would pay every year to take part in the moving party. That's the kind of thing that you could do with a little bit of CPA money on a regular basis. Well, I understand there's been efforts to clean this up and improve it, but they never seem to quite make it all the way. And funding is obviously one of the reasons, ongoing funding. So with the CPA, you'd have a regular source of money, so an annual cleanup could happen. The kind of signage that we talked about before that explained historically what was going on here. If you could have pictures here on historical sites, and I'm sure the photographs exist, to show what it looked like, it would just be incredibly cool. And then once a year, an actual mule, maybe that's a little bit out of control, but that's the kind of thing that with a little imagination and a little bit of money could turn this kind of forgotten space into something pretty magical.
Seems like the kind of thing that would put Woburn on the map for the people who are historically seeking.
Right.
I know that the Middlesex Canal Tour already exists, going up through Lowell and places, and this could be something we could hook onto as well.
Lowell has done a fantastic job of
totally.
capitalizing on their canals and their history, and Woburn's obviously not on that scale, but there's a story
With
to
the
tell
mills,
here.
yeah.
There's definitely a story to tell here. I understand that this is one of the great historic houses.
Yes.
Right across there.
Yes. 1795, I believe it's from, and it's just down the way. At the end of the path is the Baldwin Mansion.
Which is the restaurant now.
The restaurant now used to be across the street, and when the building was going on, people were questioning what to do with it because they did not want to get rid of the old Baldwin Mansion. Which, did you know it's Baldwin as in Baldwin apples?
I think I picked that up one time through Google or something.
Yep.
Or Wikipedia.
And all of his orchards were on the other side of this. And so instead of destroying it, they moved it across the street, and it was a great success.
Great.
One of the early ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that this area, again, very much like the bog we were just at, could be really, really special. And it doesn't take a huge amount of money. It just takes a little bit of oomph, a little bit of ongoing funding, exactly what the CPA was designed to do.
And it could possibly be connected to some of the proposed bike routes that are around, and that, of course, adds more to it.
Yeah, having been a mule trail, this all you'd have to do is trim some of these branches that are hanging so the bikers don't get clunked in the head.
That wouldn't be so good.
And that's not hard to do, and you'd have a wonderful trail.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and amazing how close it is to 128.
Right.
It's
well,
right there.
One of the amazing things about Woburn is that from Horn Pond to the bog to all of these other natural areas, it's got such surprising amount of hidden open space inside 128. Most people just don't even know about
That's
it.
Right.
So a little bit of money to keep places up, to put up some signs, to have some flyers made, and regular upkeep. Because we've all seen it, people plant trees and then they die.
Yeah.
You can't, getting the upfront money is great, but you need the ongoing, and I think that is really what the Community Preservation Act can provide here.
That, and as I'm sure you know, once you get CPA projects going, it calls in all sorts of other eligibilities for Clean Water Act and all kinds of federal grants, state grants for preserving.
And it just makes a richer experience for, again, I can just picture this a little bit spiffed up with some signs.
Yep, not much.
And wouldn't take a lot to make this into a really, another point of pride for Woburn.
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay. The trail here is starting to get blocked off. There's two trails. You don't really know where they go. And people do hesitate to take a walk if they're not sure where it goes. One thing I find is that kids today are just not as comfortable being outdoors as they were when we were kids. So anything, I think, that makes the outdoors more friendly and accessible to kids to go out and be outside, get away from the TV and the iPhone for a little while would be great.
Maybe bring Girl Scout troops or Boy Scout troops down here.
Absolutely. There's a lot of projects they could do, and just for any kid to just take a walk, I think it'd be great.
Yeah. Hi. We are very lucky to be joined today by Kathy Lucero, who is the co-founder and vice president of the Woburn Historical Society. Yep. And she has agreed to walk us through this wonderful open-air museum.
Ancient outdoor museum. This is an ancient outdoor museum. It is my pleasure really to introduce you to the history of this cemetery.
This is the first burial.
First burial ground, right? And it's on Park Street, right off the center. And for those who haven't come here before, they should, because this is a beautiful outdoor museum. It is actually the beginning of our history is here. And this cemetery that you see here probably was incorporated with the town in 1642 because the church, the Puritan church, which is the first parish, which is, as we would know it today, the first congregational church, which that building is the sixth edifice of that first parish. But the first parish, the founding of the town, and this burial ground are all one and the same. The Puritan beliefs are here. You'll see that on the stones, the iconology, as we walk around and look at a few of the stones. But this cemetery was the name of the street out here. I want to start with that first. It's called Park Street now, but for 200 years it was called First Burial Ground Lane for 200 years. And then when the town took it over in about 1824, because the church was the administrator of this and the second burial ground. This burial ground, first shows up in town records about 1662, but obviously the town is founded in 1642, and we know that the first person to die in Woburn was a child. I believe it was a Richardson. And then when this first...
Was that in 1642 as well?
1642, a child, yes. Many, many children
buried
are buried
here.
Many children. I would say there has to be about 150 children buried here because of smallpox and just the hard life that they had. But this cemetery has about in 1866, Nathan Wyman was the town clerk, and he went around, and there's actually in the Woburn Daily Times, his recordings of it, where he would go and he marked out every stone. Like I came up the walkway and to my left, to my right. And so we've been lucky enough to look at that. And he recorded about 268 stones. But William Cutter from the library, the famous historian and researcher for the library in that same time period, he found about 30, he has 37 other names. So I would say there's close to 300, 280, 300 that would be buried here. You see there's no symmetry in the cemetery. It wasn't until the 18th century that they started to have some symmetry of rows, like the second burial ground. This one here was an open field. There was a pond back in here. This was the church, it was in the center of town. So when you died, they just came, up it came, and they just put you in.
Right.
There were no real markers of the founders of Woburn. There's the 7 original founders. I would say, according to records, they say there's 5 out of the 6 are buried here, including Captain Edward Johnson, who died in 1672. You have the 3 Richardson brothers, John Mosel. Thomas Graves he came from Charlestown, but he never lived in Woburn. And Edward Converse was here also. So all of these stones that you see here are mostly slate. You have English slate and American slate. And the English slate was better, more expensive.
Some of them seem to be in kind of rough shape.
Well, you know what it is? There's no protection here.
Right.
This is open. It's always been an open field. And I think that what you have to look at when you look at this is that as a community, we have a civic responsibility to protect this, because it's the 23rd oldest church in the Commonwealth, so this goes with it. And our first minister, Reverend Thomas Carter, is buried here. There's no marker for him. The 4 ministers that came after him. Jabaz Fox, and a few others. They're all buried here. The most common family name here is Richardson. There's 56 Richardson stones that you'll
Wow.
see here. The next name would be Carter, and Fowle is one of them also.
And you mentioned the
Thompson.
Baldwins before.
The Baldwins are, yeah. The Baldwin, that's the Baldwin obelisk at the top of the hill, and that really is a vault. There are between 13 and 18 Baldwins, including Henry Baldwin, which is Loami Baldwin's father. He is a town founder, recorder. And he is here. There are 15 Revolutionary War soldiers buried here. The second burial ground has over 50, probably close to 51, 52. And there are probably about 60 veterans that are buried here from the French and Indian War, King Philip's War. That's why you see that I put these flags out with other members of our society because they never got really the flags because they didn't know who were the veterans. And, you know what I'm saying? So now we do it. And the Friends of Woburn Veterans were wonderful, and they gave me these markers that say Revolutionary War. And I'm happy to make sure people know who the Revolutionary War soldiers are. This stone that we're at here was a non-combatant, but he was probably the first one killed in the American Revolution, Ashel Porter. And the story goes that he was like a farmer, an egg salesman, and he was on his way back from Cambridge and Arlington when the British got him, and they got him along with a Richardson that he was with, another fellow, and they were headed towards Lexington, and what had happened is the British had to move on and go on into Lexington and Concord, and they had these prisoners, and they said, listen, we'll let you go, just walk away and we'll let you go. Richardson walked away, he ran, and they shot him in the back.
Oh.
So he really was the first, one that was killed in the Revolutionary War from Woburn. And obviously over here in the far corner, kind of down the hill from Baldwin, is Daniel Thompson. And Daniel Thompson is our first casualty of the American Revolution. He lived on Main Street, he had a family. His brother, Samuel Thompson, is the diarist who wrote about King Philip's War. He's buried in the second burial ground, but their father is buried here. And as I said, there are many children buried here, many children. And our oldest graves are over here near the street. And they are, the oldest stone that you'll see marked is 1689-90, because the calendar years they used then were quite different. And
Do you want to show us that one?
Yeah, I think they're over this way.
It's wonderful to think about how CPA could really help with helping the restoration.
In the preservation, I know it's difficult. A lot of people don't understand how that works. But a lot of communities, such as Lexington and Concord, who have these ancient burial grounds and have this wonderful United States history, because this is United States history.
Yeah.
This is one of the oldest in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And
obviously oldest in the country. Then.
Well, we're all doing a lot of others that don't even exist.
Right.
But he's over here this way. Sorry about that. Just going to wander around. It's hard with the leaves now to find them. See this stone right here? See the 3? 1 loops? That is for them to enter into eternity like a gate. And you see the wings, skull? Those are the wings of death. The iconology that's here is fabulous. And Lamson was a famous Charlestown carver, a stone carver. And he has done probably about 5 or 6, 7 stones here. And that's very famous in colonial stone history also. And the Puritans, when you look at their stones as opposed to 18th century, you see the winged skulls, everything says death, and you don't see cherubs or flowers or anything. They didn't believe in it. They didn't believe in religious symbols.
Yeah, they all have it.
That's the head of death. That's what that's called, the head of death. And same with the skull and crossbones over here, So you can tell that these people were influential in the town. The other thing that I want to bring out is in the 17th century, when there were citizens of color, during that time frame, whether they be Indian, whether they be African Americans, they would not be allowed to be buried in the main cemetery, and that's most cemeteries. They would be buried out on the outskirts of the boundaries of the community grave site. So we don't know, there's all ledge up that way, but we do find that there are, like the Wymans had a slave or a servant, they call them then. But Woburn did, during the Revolutionary time period, did have families that had, the Tays had them, the Wymans, maybe one or two. And Woburn did have 18 patriots of color that fought during the Revolutionary War, which is very high for the surrounding towns. And many of them stayed here or came here originally, or fought for other Woburnites that didn't want to serve. You know, they had the bounty that they could pay. Right. Now, I wanted to explain.
I think this is him.
Is this him over here? Could be. We found him. Here he is. Yep. Yep. That's him. You can see how it's difficult to. The stones have been they've been damaged. A lot of them have been damaged, but they've been damaged for a lot of reasons. Vandalism, just wear and tear. But during the Revolutionary War, a lot of the headstones are missing because they needed to take the slate for bullets and ammunition, and also to line chimneys of their homes. So you'll see a few over there that have been damaged or are just totally removed. I want to show you this stone here, which is of a minister. That's damaged, vandalism.
See the vandalism.
Yeah, that's vandalism. So what we need here is what we'd love to do, working with the Cemetery Commission in the city, where the society has had met with people from both groups, because we want to make them aware of what's here to preserve, but also to see what has to be done.
Yes.
But you can see it's the preservations of the stones.
But it is possible to fix these.
Yeah,
right?
Yes,
Get rid of
the
the
conservator
marking.
would come in and fix it, absolutely. They would come in, they would clean them up, they could repair them, they could straighten them out, get them up out of the ground.
Right.
You see, there could be many buried. So a GPR, ground penetrating radar, is what we hope to do in the near future. And if that's the case, then they will mark it out in a grid pattern, and we would start by preservation, finding where the graves are. Yes, they're here. No, there's nothing here. If you turn this way, this here, as I said, is Park Street. If you go down by the wall, can you see where it's open down here?
Yes.
Okay, in 1849, see, the city owned it now. The church gave it over to the town. So what they did was they dug out and they put a pound in there. Not a dog pound, but a pound that you would put cattle or horses. And when they did that, there was a gentleman here named John Locke from Cincinnati, a professor. He came to visit his relatives' graves. He was here when they were digging this out. Well, when they were digging it out, bodies came out. So he did a scathing letter to the town saying, how dare you...
What year was this?
1849, when they put the pound in. And I think probably 4 or 5 bodies came out, and he describes, the skull with the gray hair and, that kind of stuff. And he was appalled that because these people were dead for so long, their relatives were all gone, that nobody, so to speak, would cry out for them and attack the people who were digging up their graves. A couple of them have been moved. One of them was Dr. Sylvanus Plimpton's daughter, a young girl. He moved her immediately from here over to the second burial ground. And Fifield, the little tiny flag by the fence straight ahead, all by itself down there waving.
Yes.
That's his grave down there. Because he's documented as one of the bodies that they moved out of here. So it's been...
So your group, if you can figure out where the bodies are and who's buried here without stones, your group would be able to do some research on it.
Well, we already, we know who should be here. Now, some people ask, well, what are you doing the GPR for? You're doing it because you have to start the preservation in steps.
Yes. And
it all costs money, and as all towns and cities know that. But education is the first thing, to educate people as to the importance of this. This is an outdoor, as I mentioned, ancient museum. That's what this is. It's not a dumping ground. It's not a place to come and drink and, do whatever. It isn't. It's a place to respect. So in order to do that, a GPR will map out, because there could be graves all in here.
Yeah.
There could be graves in here, because we have photographed, the society, the members of my group, we have come here last year and the year before, and we have photographed every gravestone that's here. and kind of did a grid, did an Excel database, so that when we do get to do GPR, if that comes about, then we will be able to say, okay, this is who I think we have. Did you find how many more? And then they literally map it out for us so that a fencing can be attached at some point. Because you can see fencing is here. Like this fence up here doesn't do any good because the gate's it's open.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, it's better than nothing, I suppose. But there's nothing here. You know, so and also it's not just the protection of the stones and preservation and documenting who and what is here, it's also the landscaping. Because, you know, 100 years ago, there were trees all over the place. And obviously, through the years, they get old, they come down, a storm or weather brings it down. But it's really quite a beautiful place. I think it tells us who we are.
Yeah.
You know, this tells us who we are and all the wonderful people that came before us. So,
and I'm also thinking beyond being such a wonderful place for Woburnites to come to and learn about, people outside of Woburn.
Oh, many people come here.
Would be very interested in seeing the restoration.
Well, there's a couple of things. We started doing the tours here, the Historical Society doing the tours, and we do it also for public tours that we do, and we did one last year to introduce people to Revolutionary War heroes, veterans that are here, families that are here. But in the schools is what we really want to educate the children to what a great history we have here in town. And we started in April with the third graders. So we had over 400, all the third graders in the town came on a trolley, they came up, and I gotta tell you, this was one of their coolest places that they liked because they learned about Revolutionary War, or they, you know, climbed the hill over there, or, you know, saw the stones and the iconology that's there. And heard the history of the wonderful people who are here. So it's really a wonderful place to be proud of.
Yes.
So with that pride, we really have to make it look worth showing.
We have to make it something that we can be proud of. Right.
And I think we will. I really do. I think it's a matter of education.
Yeah.
And a matter of finding funds, because that's realistic. This takes a lot of money to do this, and but I think it's about time. Generations have passed now. I think it's about time.
Yeah.
It's always been a subject or a bone of contention, no pun intended, but it's always been that through generations. You can see even in the 18th century, 19th century, you know, people complaining, you're not taking care of the burial grounds. And those people in those days probably did have relatives that they could associate with, you know. Because the last burial here is over there at the Fowle Monument. Which is in the 19th century, and
And that's like a burial vault as well.
That's there's probably 3 or 4 that are buried there. Yeah. And when this was in 1910, we have a beautiful picture in 1910 of the cemetery, and the Fowles, those buildings were there, but there was beautiful wrought iron fencing. It was this whole different area. So somehow at some point, it came over to the cemetery, you know, and under the commission years ago. Probably, I don't know, maybe in the 1930s or 1940s or something. So, but all of these burials that you see go all the way up, and as I mentioned before, this is the Baldwin obelisk, and that was put by his family. Loami Baldwin is buried there, and of course Loami Baldwin is
of the Baldwin mansion.
Yes, his father built it, and Loami Baldwin, and he was a great friend of Count Rumford, which was the Thompson, you know, Count Rumford.
Yep.
And but he led our men on that day, on April 19th, to Concord and Lexington, and you know, there's a lot to be proud of. There are probably between 13 and 18 Baldwins that are buried there, including his father, Henry, who was a town signer. And in this are, as I mentioned, 56 Richardsons that we could identify, because the town, when they founded it, everything's around the center. But the Richardsons were out by Washington Street and Cross Street. The 3 Richardson brothers had that, like Richardson Row. Captain Johnson was more towards Cambridge Street, Cambridge Road up that way. They all had thousands of acres. So, and then John Mosel, the house is on Montville Avenue, next to the burial ground, was the first location of his house. So they're all they're here, and you know, it's quite a place, really.
Well,
I enjoy it because I feel like I know them. I feel like I know them now. That's kind of scary in itself, but I feel very proud that we have such great history here. And same with the second burial ground too.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm sure you know that cemeteries are one of the major, or one of the most common things that the CPA is used for.
Yes, I know.
So-
I do know it personally. I know that.
Yeah.
And,
And that's why one of the reasons
right,
we really want to get
right,
it passed.
Right. And I do know
And
everybody.
the second burial would be just
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's probably about 400 burials over there. And they closed that burial ground in 1843 when they opened up Woodbrook in 1845, around that time. So many people literally took their family member and moved them into the wonderful Woodbrook because it was beautiful to walk around. And
Right.
you know, if you had money, you could do that, I suppose.
Right.
But that burial's just as important. As I mentioned before, it has over 51, 52 Revolutionary War veterans. And one Civil War veteran, believe it or not, is buried over there
Oh.
also. And those stones are a little better shaped than this. First of all, it's 18th century stone, 19th century stone, so it's a little different as far as size and iconology that's on them. But literally just as important and needs to be protected. It is protected a little better than here because it's locked in. But still, you know, people get in or...
Yeah. Well, and just the weather.
Right, right.
You
Well,
can't keep
absolutely,
the weather out.
absolutely.
So-
But you can see this is all exposed and
Yeah.
there's no protection at all
Right.
here. But the CPA I know is an issue for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't understand what it does and what it could do. I do know that a lot of towns around us, because of doing research on trying to repair and do preservation here, that the society does know that it is used by Lexington and Concord and you know, many more around us, because they know it takes a lot of money to preserve history.
Right.
It takes a lot of money.
But it's
But doing education,
priceless.
yeah, I know, you can't replace it.
right, exactly.
Cannot replace what their contribution was to the town and city of Woburn. So I do hope down the way that it all works out.
Well,
I have hope that it will.
We
and
think,
I
yeah.
really do.
I mean, a lot of it is just the educating, because it is kind of a complicated
It
act.
is. There's a lot of factors to it, and but I think what's surprising is a lot of people do not know it even exists down here, because the dynamics of and the demographics of Woburn have changed, and I think that that's what we found doing the trolley tour, say for the third graders, that their parents are young, they're moving into Woburn, they don't know our wonderful history, so we keep plugging away in our own way of trying to educate people. But this is one place that's very important. But
So
we get
looking to the future by exploring the
oh
past.
yeah. You have to know.
Yeah.
You have to know where you've been so you know where you're going.
Right.
So absolutely. But we do get calls from all over. People from Australia have come here, and all parts of the country, because they are connected to a Johnson or they're connected to a Richardson. A lot of Richardsons. And when they come, they are kind of taken back that it is
In
kind
such
of
bad
in a way.
shape.
It's a beautiful little spot, and but I'm sure in the future I have great hope that we'll be taking great care of this place and passing it on to other people.
Yep.
See, that's a recent break, but we found these pieces when we were taking the photographs. So what we would do to develop the database, you know, so that we will know as best we can who's here and who's not here, and compare it to what, you know, obviously people have done, like Nathan Wyman in 1866 or William Cutter. If you have a last name or you found even a birth date, you could go through the death records at that time and cross it over, because there weren't that many people in Woburn, so you could kind of figure out, okay, if they died on this day and it's a woman, you can put, and it says 54, you can figure out who it is. But all this kind of breakage, you'll see it all up in here. And I think it's because, you know, kids, when they come, they hang out on the hill. You know, this is for generations, I'm sure they did it. But they would be here and, you know, drinking or hanging out, and, you know, these stones are easy prey. You know, this one over here, these are all broken. Over here. You can see the damage on this one, too. But it can be, I believe, a conservative to fix that. And that's what you'll see is pieces like this. And it has some information on who they are. But all of this has been broken off. And that's in two pieces over there too. But you can see most of it is slate. You know, quite beautiful actually. When they were all, there must have been something when they were all fixed. The other thing is you don't find a husband and wife on the same stone. So you know how nowadays we have a stone, and you know, you put whoever dies first, you put their name on it, and then the wife over the husband. They don't do that. So you'll have a wife over here and a husband over here. So it's quite different. And with so many Richardsons and so many Carters, vowels, it's difficult to. Is this one? And they all have Mary, you know, all Susanna, or something like that. And you're like, is this the same Susanna Richardson that belongs to this one? They just have the name on there. Yeah. So we match them up. They can see. They're footstones. So that's the head, and that's where the body is. And they're buried pretty close together.
They certainly are.
Yeah. So we find a footstone, especially in the second burial ground. You would find a footstone way off where maybe it fell, and someone just picked it up and put it wherever, and then you realize, well, you know what, the headstone is over here. So, because Ellen Hamilton and I have been over there taking photographs, over the summer, so that we try to document that gravestone. I mean, that cemetery now too. So it'll be wonderful for people to learn about. That's for sure. This stone here, for our tour, as you can see the gravestone? This must have been just either pulled over or fell down, because I know the people who take care of it at the cemetery, they had that stone up. And it's all got inscribed on the other side. So this has either been just knocked over by the weather or someone just pushed this over. Because there's a glass bottle under here too that was not here. It's buried under there. Can you see that jar? You know, I don't know where that came from. That looks like somebody's maybe been drinking. I really don't know. But that's a glass. And that, and you can see the broken glass here.
Yeah.
So somebody has been here to drink. I tend to think it was pushed over. This one here has always been in the ground. They had the armor of the what do you call it? This is the tabletop to this.
Oh.
See, that came off. And that had a slate. And on it was the emblem of that family crest. And they probably took it off during the Revolutionary War, or they stole it afterwards. But that belongs up here. Oh. So when you see that old photo that I have, you can see this in the background, that it's up on top of these pillars. But this is recent.
Looks like
this
it was flat here, though.
Huh?
Looks like it was flat here.
What happened was,
and they flipped it over.
It was laying down. And it's a beautiful stone on the other side. You can read, I believe it's the Cotton girl. Her last name is Cotton. And that was laying down. And I know that they got it back up. They fixed it.
Oh.
The cemetery, when they were cutting the grass and everything, they saw it and they fixed it. So somebody has come recently and knocked this back down.
Oh.
And that's a beautiful stone on the other side. So that's a shame, really. And I'll have to tell them. I'll have to say, can you come by and pick it up? Just so it does get protected for the winter, But that's a heavy stone to knock over. Just like this one is. You can tell that's been in the ground a long time. So this is a recent thing right here. How unfortunate. That makes me sad.
Very good.
Thank you for coming to the first burial ground.
And thank you for showing us around and enjoying this beautiful fall day.
It is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful place to be down here, this section.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.